My name's Rick. I do some of the fab work here at Southside Sleds. A lot of times making pieces that aren't supposed to be there, go there, work, fit. So this is our 1954 Pontiac project. Needed a little freshen up on the motor, decided he needed power steering, put some air conditioning and whatnot. There are not any kits for power steering, but of course that doesn't stop us. So I'll show you a little bit what went into getting to where we are so far with the power steering. We used a power steering rack from a 2000 Chevy Cavalier because it was going to fit the closest. Still had to modify a lot of things, but it fit the best it could before we basically had to start cutting stuff up. We had to shorten the steering column, which we'll get into when we get this car raised up. But if you look down here, the steering column originally was solid right into the steering box that mounted to the frame. So the 2 points it was mounted was under the dash and then all the way until it got to the frame, and it's just one solid piece. So we had to get rid of the original manual steering box, and then had to cut the steering column back for our clearance to put a new shaft in. So when we cut it back, we didn't have this point of contact of where it was fixed to the frame. So we had to machine this cap. Is basically a cap for the end of the column. We also had to machine it so we could put a bearing in there so the shaft would have something to ride on, since all this was gone now. So once that happened, then we needed a place to mount the lower half of the column. So we made a collar and a plate. So now it's mounted under the dash into the firewall instead of under dash into the frame. Okay, from the underside we can see this a little better. Power steering rack from the Cavalier. So I had to build a mounting structure for this under the frame. Of course, taking into account we've got a clear oil pan, exhaust, brakes, can't be too low for ground clearance. We found basically the only spot this can go to just clear everything. Made this mount, got it welded into the frame. These arms were going to be too long for the application, so we cut these down, redid these, shortened them. Then since this wasn't going to line up where it needed to be, we got this QA1 bump stop kit from Speedway, which was about twice as long. So we had to turn this down, cut this down, retap this, remodify this to work at the moment. But once we get this car on the ground and load, we'll see where we're gonna be, what angle we've got here, so we can take some spacers out and we'll adjust this as we go. And we already put disc brake kit on the front of this, which in turn we switched to a Willwood master cylinder and redid all of this. This was the original location as far as down on the frame of the original master cylinder. So we went ahead and kept it here. We had to notch out this frame, set it in for clearance issues, and then we'll just have a satellite feed up on the side of the inner fender. One thing that we had to really watch, it's not the original motor that is in this car. This is 1954 Pontiac. It's got a 389 out of a 1959, and it takes up almost every bit of this engine bay. That's what's going back in it. So we really had to watch all of our clearances. And then there's a transmission from a 1955. I believe it's a slant pan transmission. You can see this cap we had to machine, and it's got an inner bearing. So this has something to ride on. Runs pretty smooth, no hang-ups. So as far as the steering, that was one of our big pieces on this, one of our big hurdles. So we're about 90% there on this at the moment. The next thing is to go ahead and get our motor fit in here, and then we'll work some exhaust around everything. But we hung the motor in here to double check where this is, the center. But right now we don't have any clearance issues right now. If we run into any, we'll deal with that then and fix that. And some of the few other little things we're going to be doing to it, some of the minor things that'll be coming down the road, some upcoming videos. We're going to put a visor on it. He wants all new glass in it. Once the motor is back in, you'll see some of the bracketry we had to make. Had to make a bracket for the power steering pump to work with this rack. Switching from generator over to alternator, I had to make that bracket, and both of those brackets for this 59 motor. And then once we get the motor fit in and we can check some clearance issues as far as the air conditioning, then we'll be making some other brackets and getting all it mocked up in there. So there's definitely more to come, but one of the big hurdles as to now is the steering, and we're almost there.